8 caskets, all white, all small. The largest one held an 11-year-old girl. The smallest one held a child who had not yet learned to tie her shoes. Someone in that church counted them. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And then they stopped counting because the number stopped making sense. This is not a story about a war zone. This is not a story about a country far away. This happened inside a home. Before we go any further, this story involves the loss of children. It is heavy, it is real, and it deserves to be told with care. We ask that you watch with an open heart. If you are new to this channel, we cover true crime cases the way they deserve to be covered, not just the headlines, the full story, the background, the timeline, the people, the failures, and the aftermath that most outlets never stay long enough to report. This case has details that will change how you see it entirely. Hit subscribe right now so you never miss a story like this one. And drop a comment below. Tell us where in the world you are watching from. This case traveled far beyond Louisiana. We want to know where you are, now. Let's go back to April 19th. Shamar Elkins was 31 years old. To most people who crossed paths with him, he was completely ordinary. He worked a steady job at UPS as a delivery driver. He had served in the Louisiana Army National Guard from 2013 to 2020 as a signal systems and fire support specialist. He was never deployed overseas. He left the Guard as a private, on paper, a working man, a father of 7. But the people who knew him closest understood that a very different story had been building for years. Elkins was born to a teenage mother named Mahalia, who was struggling with a dependency on crack cocaine at the time. Unable to care for him, she placed him with a family friend named Betty Walker, who raised him as her own. He and his biological mother eventually reconnected in his mid-20s, a relationship that, by most accounts, he valued deeply. But beneath the surface, cracks had been forming long before anyone outside his inner circle noticed. In 2019, 7 years before this case, Elkins was arrested on 2 charges: illegal use of a weapon and carrying a firearm on school property. According to a police report, Elkins fired 5 rounds at a vehicle on a public street less than 300 feet from Caddo Magnet High School, while children were playing outside in the schoolyard. He pleaded guilty to the weapons charge. The second charge was dropped. He received 18 months of probation. And under Louisiana law, that conviction placed a 10-year ban on him possessing any firearm. That single legal fact will become one of the most important details in this entire story. Shamar Elkins had children with 2 different women. His former partner, Christina Snow, was the mother of 3 of his children. In 2024, he married Shaniqua Pugh. Together, they had 4 children. By early 2026, that marriage was coming apart. A family member confirmed to reporters that Elkins and Shaniqua had begun separation proceedings. They were due in family court on April 20th, the morning after April 19th. His own brother described him as emotionally consumed by the breakdown. He kept repeating the same words to people around him. "Bro, I don't want to lose my wife." But Betty Walker, the woman who raised him, recalled something from 3 years earlier that painted a far more alarming picture. In 2023, when Shaniqua had briefly considered leaving him, Elkins had made a direct threat. He told her, "If you try to leave and take those kids, I'll kill you, my kids, and myself." That threat was never reported to law enforcement. It was not the last time warning signs appeared. In February 2026, just 2 months before this case, Elkins made an attempt on his own life. Afterward, according to Walker, he entered counseling at a nearby Veterans Affairs hospital and stayed for approximately a week and a half before being released. Then on April 5th, 2026, 14 days before the incident, he called his stepfather's home. His biological mother, Mahalia, answered. He asked to speak to his stepfather and told him he had been having dark thoughts, including thoughts of ending his own life. Then he said something that, in hindsight, reads like a goodbye. Some people don't come back from their demons. He ended the call abruptly. No welfare check was requested. No follow-up with his care providers was documented. 14 days later, 8 children were gone. Every sign was there. The threat, the prior conviction, the mental health crisis 2 months earlier, the final phone call. And yet, on the morning of April 19, 2026, Shamar Elkins had access to a weapon he was legally forbidden from owning. How that weapon ended up in his hands and what happened inside 2 homes in Cedar Grove in under 70 minutes is a story that the full investigation has only recently pieced together. That is where we are going next. The first emergency call reached dispatch at 5:55 in the morning. Police arrived at a home on Harrison Street at 6:01 a.m. This was the residence of Christina Snow, Elkins's former partner and the mother of 3 of his children. Christina had been struck by multiple rounds. She was critically injured but alive. She managed to communicate one critical piece of information to officers before they could fully assess the scene. Elkins had taken her 3 children and left. The second emergency call came in at 6:07. By 6:08 a.m., investigators had a name: Shamar Elkins. From the first call to identifying the suspect, 13 minutes. But 13 minutes, in this case, was already far too late. The second address was a home on West 79th Street. This was where Shaniqua Pugh, Elkins's wife, lived with their children. Also in the home that morning were Shaniqua's sister, Keosha Pugh, and Keosha's 12-year-old daughter. Investigators later confirmed that when Elkins entered that home, every child inside was asleep. Shaniqua was injured, but survived. Keosha and her 12-year-old daughter managed to escape by climbing from an upper window onto the roof and dropping to the ground below. Keosha sustained broken bones in the fall. Her daughter came away with minor injuries. A neighbor 2 houses down told investigators that her home security camera had captured footage of a figure leaving the property, with sounds of the incident audible in the background. Shortly after, a family member received a phone call from Keosha. 7 words. "He done shot the kids. He killed the kids." Inside that home, 7 of Elkins' children had been in the house. One more child was also present: Marcaden Pugh, age 10, the son of Elkins' brother-in-law and the children's cousin. He had simply been there that morning. Not one of the children survived. Police later confirmed the incident spanned 4 separate locations across Cedar Grove. Here is where the investigation took a turn that prosecutors described as deeply troubling. The firearm used was a .22 caliber Mossberg 715P, a rifle-style pistol. Shamar Elkins had been legally prohibited from possessing any firearm since his 2019 conviction. That 10-year ban was still in effect on April 19, 2026. So investigators immediately began working backward. How did he obtain this weapon? On April 21st, and 2 days after the incident, federal authorities announced the arrest of Charles Ford, a 56-year-old Shreveport resident. Ford was himself a convicted felon, also legally barred from owning a firearm. According to prosecutors, the evidence suggests Elkins took the rifle from Ford's vehicle without his knowledge. When Ford later confronted Elkins directly about the missing firearm, Elkins reportedly became hostile and confrontational. The court affidavit states Ford described Elkins as becoming offensive during that exchange. Ford chose to let it go. Federal ATF agents launched a full investigation. The FBI also offered assistance. 2 men, both legally prohibited from owning firearms. 1 weapon, 8 children gone. At 6:15 a.m., police received word that Elkins had taken a vehicle by force and was fleeing the area. Traffic units spotted the vehicle at 6:17. At 6:29 a.m., officers made direct contact with Elkins. An exchange of fire occurred. The pursuit extended approximately 15 miles from Cedar Grove into neighboring Bossier City, Louisiana. At 6:43 a.m., officers reached the West 79th Street home and located the victims inside. At 7:03 a.m., 68 minutes after the first emergency call, Shamar Elkins was pronounced dead in Bossier City. A preliminary autopsy report concluded the cause was a self-inflicted wound sustained during the confrontation with police. There would be no courtroom, no cross-examination, no public testimony. The three mothers and the entire community of Cedar Grove were left to carry the weight of unanswered questions. 68 minutes, 2 homes, 8 children. But what the timeline does not show you is who those 8 children actually were. Because before this becomes a case number or a statistic, it needs to be understood as something else entirely. 8 individual lives, 8 personalities, 8 futures. That is what we cover next. At the funeral service, the officiant made one deliberate choice before anything else was said. Each name was read slowly, separately, with a full pause between them, not rushed, not listed, given space. Because these were not statistics. They were children with personalities already shaping the world around them. Jayla Elkins, age 3, the youngest. She had not yet started school. She had not yet learned to read or write or tie her own shoes. Shayla Elkins, age 5, Jayla's sister. The two of them together were described by family as the kind of girls who walked into a room and immediately raised the energy level of everyone in it. Braylon Snow, age 5, gentle in a way that people noticed. Those who knew him said his presence had a calming effect. Quiet rooms felt different when he was in them. Kadarian Snow, age 6, known for pure, uncomplicated joy. School staff at his elementary school remembered that every single time he spotted his principal in the hallway, his face lit up completely. Kayla Pugh, age 6, spirited and curious, one of 3 Pugh siblings in the house that morning. Layla Pugh, age 7, her sister, described by teachers at Summer Grove Elementary as attentive and warm, the kind of student who made a classroom feel like a community. Marcaden Pugh, age 10. He was not Elkins' biological child. He was the son of Elkins' brother-in-law, a cousin who had been at the house that morning. Family described him as someone who came home each day carrying questions, stories, and new things he had figured out. Soraya Snow, age 11, the oldest. She loved working with dolls' hair, styling them with a patience and focus that, according to people who knew her, hinted at something real. She had only just begun the process of figuring out who she wanted to become. 5 girls, 3 boys. The oldest had barely entered middle school. The youngest was 3 years old. They attended Johnny Cochran Head Start, Summer Grove Elementary, Linwood Public Charter School. The Monday after April 19th, 8 desks sat empty. Their teachers walked in anyway and had to find a way to begin. Every one of those children had a mother. Christina Snow Elkins' former partner. She was struck multiple times at Harrison Street. She survived. 3 of her children did not. Shaniqua Pugh, Elkins' wife. She was injured at West 79th Street. She survived. 4 of her children did not. Keosha Pugh, Shaniqua's sister. She was living in the home and escaped by dropping from the roof with her 12-year-old daughter. She survived with broken bones. Her daughter came away with minor injuries. 3 women, none of them responsible for what happened. All 3 left to bury children and rebuild lives inside a house that would never sound the same. When investigators and analysts began looking at Shamar Elkins' history, what emerged was not a story of someone who came out of nowhere. It was a story of a documented pattern and a series of moments where intervention was possible. 2019. Elkins is arrested for illegal use of a weapon and carrying a firearm near school grounds, pleads guilty, receives probation. A 10-year firearm ban is imposed by Louisiana law. 2023. Elkins threatens his wife and children during a domestic dispute. The threat is not reported to law enforcement. February 2026. Elkins makes an attempt on his own life. He enters a Veterans Affairs hospital for mental health treatment. He is released after approximately 10 days. April 5, 2026. Elkins contacts his biological family. He tells his stepfather he is experiencing dark thoughts. He says, "Some people don't come back from their demons." The call ends abruptly. No welfare check is requested. April 19, 2026. The first emergency call reaches dispatch at 5:55 a.m. By 7:03 a.m., 8 children are gone. Shreveport Police Chief Wayne Smith confirmed publicly that his department had no prior record of domestic disturbance calls connected to Elkins's household. But researcher Catherine Spearman, an assistant professor at Pennsylvania State University whose work focuses on the overlap between domestic violence and harm to children, drew a direct line between this case and a separate family tragedy that had occurred just 4 days earlier in a different state. In that case as well, the perpetrator was in the middle of a contentious separation. In that case as well, the perpetrator had made statements to people close to him about hopelessness and violence. In both cases, a firearm was accessible despite documented warning signs. Her assessment was precise. Systems need to recognize these patterns as risk factors. Shreveport City Councilman Grayson Boucher did not soften his response. He stated publicly that more than 30% of the homicides in Shreveport are domestic in nature, and called it a true epidemic of domestic violence within the city. In March 2026, less than a month before the incident, the Shreveport City Council had voted to withdraw from a partnership with the Caddo Parish Sheriff's Office to operate a domestic violence resource center at a new police substation. The center was not operational. Mayor Tom Arsenault confirmed that his office was working toward a comprehensive domestic violence center for the city. It had not yet opened. If you are still here, and clearly you are, then you already understand what makes this channel different from a headline. We stay with the story until the full picture is visible. If you have not subscribed yet, now is the moment. Hit the bell notification so you are there for the next one, because this story is not over yet. By the evening of April 19th, the street outside the West 79th Street home had been transformed. Candles lined the sidewalk. Stuffed animals appeared at the fence posts. Balloons carrying the children's names were released into the sky above Cedar Grove. Neighbors who had never spoken before stood in each other's driveways because going home alone felt like the wrong thing to do. A community prayer vigil was organized and held on April 20th, the very next morning. No one waited for an official announcement. Residents simply showed up. Louisiana Governor Jeff Landry and his wife Sharon announced that their foundation, Love One Louisiana, would personally cover the funeral costs for all 8 children. Christy Gustafson, CEO of the Community Foundation of North Louisiana, established 2 separate financial support funds, one for the immediate needs of the surviving families, and a second fund dedicated specifically to domestic violence prevention and resources across the region. Governor Landry visited Shreveport personally. At a press conference, he did not hedge his words. "I couldn't place myself in the shoes of any father who could execute their child. It wasn't a fit of rage when he snapped once. It was systematic." That word, systematic, landed with full weight in the room, because the police timeline confirmed it. 2 separate addresses, multiple rooms, 68 minutes from start to finish. This was not a single impulsive act. Caddo Parish Public Schools. Superintendent Keith Burton made the decision to attend the funeral personally. He walked into Summer Grove Baptist Church not with talking points or policy announcements, but simply as a man trying to hold something together that had no straightforward solution. He called on everyone in the community to look after the children who were still there, the classmates, the friends, the brothers and sisters of the 8 who were gone. Because when the school doors opened again, 8 desks were empty. Teachers had to walk to the front of their classrooms, take attendance, begin a lesson, and figure out in real time how to do that. No administrative manual covers that morning. No training prepares you for it. The teachers of Cedar Grove faced it anyway. 3 weeks after April 19th, hundreds of people gathered inside Summer Grove Baptist Church. Politicians sat beside neighbors. Community leaders sat beside strangers who had driven from states away because grief at this scale crosses every boundary of personal connection. Former Congresswoman Gabby Giffords traveled to Shreveport. A survivor of a near-fatal act of gun violence herself, she did not come to deliver remarks. She came to be present. In a room like that one, presence alone carries weight that a speech cannot. Congressman Cleo Fields addressed the congregation from the front of the church. This is not a Shreveport morning. This is a nation morning. Mayor Tom Arsenault was given the floor to read a formal city proclamation. But before the official language, he paused. And he did something the room did not expect. He read each child's name, one by one. Slowly, the city council formally entered all 8 children into the permanent public record of the city of Shreveport. The Caddo Parish Commission addressed the domestic violence dimension of the case without softening the language, calling on the full community to actively confront violence within families and within homes. 3 bishops took the pulpit that day. Bishop Bernard Kimmel opened the service with a request that surprised the room. He asked the congregation, hundreds of people who had come to mourn 8 children, to praise, not to grieve first, to praise first. The room hesitated. People looked at one another, and then, slowly, they responded. Bishop Joseph Hall followed. He did not open with comfort. He opened with a challenge. "Stop pretending," he told them. He told the congregation not to perform composure while falling apart on the inside. He told them that everyone in that room had walked in carrying something real, and that pretending otherwise helped no one. Then he said the line that silenced the room. "Don't let anyone tell you how to cry." He asked the congregation, "If your faith has been shaken by what happened on April 19th, stand up where you are." People rose throughout the entire church, officials, neighbors, pastors, strangers from other cities, people who had never met the children, standing on behalf of them anyway. Bishop Melvin Porter closed with a story. A mother, he said, once planted a rose and tended it carefully. One morning she went outside and it was gone. She was certain it had not survived. She went back to the place where she had bought it, certain something had gone wrong. The person who sold it to her came to her home. They walked the yard together. And eventually, on the other side of the fence, they found the rose. It had not disappeared. It had simply grown somewhere else. The eternal 8 are not where they were planted. They made it to the other side. That phrase became the name that has stayed with this case ever since, the Eternal 8. When the service reached its end, Bishop Kimmel made one final request. He asked no one to leave. Stay. Witness this together. Hundreds of people remained in their seats as 8 white caskets, all of them small, were carried slowly from the front of the church toward the doors. Then the procession moved outside. The hearses traveled through Cedar Grove one last time, past the sidewalks where candles had been placed, past the homes where these children had grown up, past a neighborhood that understood collectively that it would carry April 19th for the rest of its life. Governor Landry's order lowered flags across the state of Louisiana to half-staff for 8 days. 1 day for each child. 8 mornings, 8 evenings. This case did not emerge from nowhere. It happened in a city where more than 30% of homicides are domestic in nature. In a state where a domestic violence resource center had been defunded weeks before the incident. In a legal system where a man with a prior conviction and a documented history of threats was still able to access a firearm through a chain of negligence that federal prosecutors are still working through. This became the deadliest mass casualty event in the United States since January 2024. The single deadliest day of domestic violence in Louisiana history. 8 children, 3 families, 2 addresses, 68 minutes, and a set of warning signs, stretching back 7 years, that formed a visible line pointing toward April 19th. The question that Cedar Grove, Shreveport, and the rest of the country is still sitting with: how many more lines like that one exist right now, unread, unreported, and unaddressed? Their names were Jayla, Shayla, Braylon, Kadarian, Kayla, Layla, Markaden, Saria. They were children with morning routines and favorite foods. Children who had arguments with their siblings and made their teachers laugh. Children who ran toward the people they loved at the end of every school day. Cedar Grove did not break. It gathered. It stood. It refused to let 8 names become a footnote in a news cycle. And that refusal, that collective choice to keep saying their names, is the most honest thing a community can do when the answers run out. If this story stayed with you, if you learned something here that you did not know before, the most direct way to support this channel is to subscribe. This is what we do here. We take the cases that matter, we report every layer of them, and we make sure the people at the center of them are never reduced to a headline. Hit subscribe, hit the bell, and if this video reached you, share it with someone who needs to see the full story. Tell us in the comments, where are you watching from? And which part of this case do you think deserves more attention than it received? We read every single comment. The eternal 8 deserve to be remembered, and so does every community still waiting for the systems around them to catch up. In memory of Jayla, Shayla, Braylon, Kadarian, Kayla, Layla, Markaden, and Saria.